Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S6, 6 to 10, The Land of the Dead, Tales from the Odyssey. Chapter 1, Island of the Cannibal Giants. For days, Odysseus, king of the Greek island of Ithaca, rode with his warriors over the calm sea. As he rode, Odysseus felt great pity for his men. He knew they grieved for their comrades murdered by the one-eyed monster, the Cyclops. He knew they also felt terrible guilt for their foolish actions had made the wind god angry. Now there was no wind to fill the sails of the 12 Greek ships. Odysseus shared the despair of his men, but he fought his grief with a single vision, the vision of home. Before they had angered the wind god, the Greeks had sailed close to Ithaca. For the first time in 10 years, Odysseus had seen the rocky shores of his island, its green woods, and the smoke of its hearth fires. He imagined his wife, Penelope, cooking dinner for his aged parents and his young son, Telemachus, now with Ithaca and his beloved family ever in mind. Odysseus rowed for 6 days and 6 nights without the help of a single breeze. He and his men rowed without stopping. On the 7th day, the Greeks came upon a mysterious land. They steered the ships toward a cove surrounded by a steep wall of cliffs, making it a natural harbor. The Greeks sailed into the harbor through a narrow passage. They tied their ships together near the shore. Though the waters were calm and peaceful, Odysseus felt a strange foreboding. He ordered the crew of his own ship not to moor the vessel with the others, but to anchor it near the mouth of the cove. When the Greeks had gone ashore, Odysseus climbed a rock to look out over the strange land. He saw the smoke of a fire rising in the distance. Who lives here? But he wondered. He quickly returned to his men and ordered the 3 of them to climb over the cliffs and explore the land. Find out who lives here, he said. Tell them we wish them no harm. The 3 scouts set out at once. Odysseus and the others waited on the rocky shore for their return. The men had not been gone long when horrible screams filled the air. 2 of the scouts charged down the side of the mountain. Shrieking and waving their arms, they appeared to have gone mad. What has happened? Odysseus shouted. In trembling voices, the men told the terrible tale. We met a girl at a spring. She invited us to go with her. When we entered the house, her mother appeared, hideous, giantess, tall as a mountain. Cried the other. She sent for her husband, another giant, a cannibal. The men broke down sobbing. They told how the cannibal giant had just snatched up their friend and eaten him before their very own eyes. A roar then shook the harbor like thunder. Odysseus looked up and saw a legion of giants standing at the top of the cliffs. The bloodthirsty cannibals began picking up huge rocks. They hurled them down the mountainside. To board the ships, Odysseus called to his men. Set sail at once. As the other Greeks scrambled onto their ships, Odysseus and his crew ran toward the mouth of the cove, where Odysseus' black ship was moored. The rest of the fleet was doomed. The giants hurled their rocks down upon the ships docked in the harbor. The rocks smashed the vessels to splinters and crushed many of the sailors to death. As the Greeks screamed in agony, the cannibals raced down to the shore and speared men as if they were catching fish for supper. Watching with the rage and horror, Odysseus knew he could save only the men aboard his own ship. He drew his sword and slashed the anchor rope. Row, row with all your might, he shouted to his men. Row for your lives. As the screams and cries of their comrades filled the air, Odysseus and his crew frantically rowed away from the cove of the cannibal giants. Chapter 2. A gift from the gods. Odysseus and his men rowed until the ship was finally safe upon the open seas. As Odysseus stared at the wine-dark waves, the screams of the dying man still rang in his ears. He realized the curse of the Cyclops was coming true. He remembered the cruel words of the hideous monster. May Odysseus never reach his home alive. May he lose his way, his ships and all his men. May he find only sorrow and trouble on his journey. Odysseus had lost nearly all his ships now, and he had lost nearly all his men. 11 vessels had been destroyed by the cannibal giants. All but 45 of his warriors had been slain. Stunned by the losses, Odysseus and his crew could not speak. They sailed on in silence, shaken by the memory of the giants, sparing the helpless wounded. Finally, the black ship came upon an island, covered with thickets and dense wood. The Greeks climbed ashore, collapsed on the rocky beach for 2 days and 2 nights. Odysseus and his men lay on the hard ground, mourning their lost comrades. On the 3rd day, when rosy dawn crept over the island, Odysseus gathered his strength and stood up. He did not wake his crew, for he knew they had lost all heart. They are too stricken with grief to hunt for food, he thought. Soon they will be too weak to sail, and they will die on this island. Desperate to save his men, Odysseus picked up his sword and spear. Then he set out in search of game. Odysseus climbed a craggy hill and looked about for signs of life. In the distance, he saw smoke rising from the green forest. It curled above the trees and drifted into the sky. Did more giants and monsters live on this shore? Odysseus wondered anxiously. Or might the inhabitants be welcoming and kind? Before Odysseus could answer these questions, he knew he must find food for his men. The gods seemed to hear Odysseus' thoughts, for just then, from out of the trees walked the giant stag with towering antlers. Odysseus hurled his spear, killing the stag at once. He then fashioned a rope from willow twigs and tied the legs of the stag together. He hoisted the stag onto his shoulders and carried it back to the Greek camp. Odysseus found his men huddled in a circle, the cloaks wrapped around their heads. Still deep in mourning, they wept bitter tears for their fallen shipmates. They trembled for their own fate as well. Listen, my friends, said Odysseus, you and I shall not go down to the land of the dead this morning. It is not our day to die. Until that day comes, we must take care of ourselves. Rise, be well, let us feast on this gift from the gods. The men uncovered their heads. They admired the mighty stag Odysseus had slain for them, and slowly they began preparing for their feast. They washed their hands and faces in the sea. After many days of grief and suffering, their hearts began to mend. Chapter 3. The Witch's Spell. All afternoon, Odysseus and his crew feasted on deer meat and wine. When the sun set and darkness covered the island, they lay down on the shore and slept peacefully. At dawn, Odysseus roused his men. Friends, I do not know where we are, he said. I know only that we are on an island. Yesterday morning, when I went hunting, I climbed the hill and saw the sea all around us. I know that others live here, for I saw smoke rising from the heart of the forest. Before Odysseus could go on, his men cried out. They feared that more horrors like the Cyclops and the cannibals, giants, might await them on this strange shore. Harness your fears, Odysseus commanded. We have no choice but to explore this island. We know not where we are or how to find our way home. We must seek help from strangers. Odysseus' men paid no heed to his words. They only grew more anxious before they surrendered completely to their terror. Odysseus came up with a plan. Listen to me, he said. We will form 2 groups. I will be captain of one, and the brave Eurylochus will be captain of the other. Odysseus quickly divided his men. 22 Greeks were placed under his own command, and 22 under that of his trusted warrior, Eurylochus. Now, Eurylochus and I will cast lots to see which of us will explore the island, said Odysseus. Odysseus and Eurylochus cast lots in a helmet. The lot fell upon Eurylochus. He had no choice but to lead his men into the heart of the green forest. With great dismay, 22 Greeks lined up behind Eurylochus. Some wept as they marched away through the shadowy trees, fearing the impending death. The Greeks who stayed behind wept as well. So many of their friends had already been slain. They readily imagined they might soon lose more. Hour after hour, Odysseus waited for the return of Eurylochus and his band of men. He watched the shadows of the forest and listened for their voices. He feared he might have made a great mistake by forcing them to set out on their quest, but he dared not share his fears with the men who had remained behind. As the sun was setting over the island, Odysseus finally heard the tramping of his feet. Eurylochus burst from the tree. He was alone. His eyes were wide with terror. Odysseus and the others rushed forward to hear his story, but Eurylochus collapsed on the ground, shaking and moaning, unable to speak. Odysseus grabbed him by the shoulders and pulled him to his feet. Where are the others? Why did you leave them? Eurylochus could not answer. Shook him again. Tell us, are they dead? No, not dead. Worse than dead. He broke down weeping. Tell us what happened, Odysseus demanded again in a shaky voice. Eurylochus told his tale. We traveled through the forest until we came to a valley. We saw a gleaming stone wall. We stepped through a gate into a clearing and soon came face to face with huge wolves and mountain lions with long, sharp claws. You were attacked by these wild creatures? Odysseus asked. Shook his head. They did not attack us, he said. The wolves licked us and whined like pet dogs. The lion gently pawed us and mewed like a house cat. It was strange and unnatural. We should have turned back. Eurylochus trembled and covered his face, but Odysseus shook him again. Go on with your tale. Tell us what happened next. Eurylochus continued. We were frightened to be greeted so strangely by these creatures. We moved quickly past them to the inner courtyard of a palace. A voice rang out from a window, a woman singing. She had the most beautiful voice I have ever heard. Who was she? Asked Odysseus. I do not know, said Eurylochus. When we peered through the window, she saw a radiant being weaving at a loom. She looked like a goddess. She had long braids that shone in the sunlight. Her gown was made of jewels. It seemed to change colors as she sang. She wove a cloth made from the most delicate silken thread. I wanted to lead us away at once, for I thought of all the terrible dangers we had faced on our journey. But I alone seemed worried. The others called out to her, and she came to her door and invited them in. I held back, hiding, while they rushed forward to enter her home. I could not stop them. They followed her into her house, and she closed the door behind them. Peering secretly through a window, I saw her offer them food and wine. Then she turned her back on them, and she mixed a potion of pale honey and wine. As she poured this into their food, I called out to warn them. I feared she was trying to drug them, but the men seemed not to hear. They swallowed her potion willingly. In an instant, they were transformed. They knew not where they were or how they had gotten there. They could not remember one another's names or even their own. While they were in the state, the woman tapped each of them with a wand, and suddenly Eurylochus trembled at the memory. He hid his face, and a chill went through Odysseus. What horrible thing had the witch done to his men? Eurylochus looked up at Odysseus. He caught his breath, then finished his dreadful tale. Bristles sprang out all over each man's body. He said they began to snort and grunt like pigs. Their heads turned into pigs' heads. The Greeks cried out and drew back in horror. The enchantress then herded the pigmen into a pigsty. Eurylochus said, she threw acorns and the butternuts to the ground, and they greedily gobbled them. up like swine in a farmyard. For a long moment, Odysseus stared at Eurymachus in silence. Finally, he spoke calmly and decisively. "Take me there. Show me the way." Eurymachus cried out in anguish. He threw himself at Odysseus' feet and begged for his life. "No, no, no, never again. Let us escape this cursed island now, before the she-monster bewitches us all." Odysseus saw that he could not calm Eurymachus' fears, but neither could he abandon his comrades trapped in the pigsty of the beautiful witch. "Very well, stay here and rest with the others. In truth, I'm the leader of all the Greeks on this island. I must save my men. I will find the way alone." Chapter 4. The Messenger God. Odysseus slung his bronze sword over his shoulder. His men watched with great distress as he left the camp and headed off into the woods. Odysseus walked through the quiet, green forest, through shadow and light, past gnarled trees and dense brush, until finally he came to the valley. In the distance rose the gleaming stone walls of the witch's palace. Odysseus halted for a moment. He thought of turning back, but he quickly gathered his strength and moved boldly toward the gate. Suddenly a young man stopped into his path. Odysseus started to reach for his sword, but in an instant he realized this was no ordinary human. The man was radiant. He shone with a light so bright that Odysseus was forced to look away. "Your courage is admirable, Odysseus," said the stranger, "but do you know who your enemy is? Have you never heard of Circe the enchantress, the daughter of the sun and the sea?" Odysseus sighed with despair. He had indeed heard of Circe the enchantress. He knew that as a mortal, he had no power to escape her charm. Once he entered the palace, he would certainly be put under a spell like the rest. "Do not despair, Odysseus," said the stranger. "I have come to help you conquer Circus and free your men. Will you not trust Hermes?" Odysseus looked up. Could this truly be Hermes, the messenger god of Mount Olympus, son of Zeus, and protector of heroes and travelers? "I bring a charm to protect you from the witch's spell," said Hermes. "What is it?" breathed Odysseus. "A special herb, impossible for humans to unearth. Only the gods can take it from the ground." The god reached into bag and pulled out a black-rooted herb with the flower as white as milk. The gods call the flower moly. "Eat the moly, and it'll protect you from anything that Circe gives you to eat or drink. When she taps you with her wand, draw your sword and make a swear on oath not to harm you." Hermes handed the black-rooted herb to Odysseus. Then, without a word, the shining god turned and disappeared back into the green forest. Odysseus stared after Hermes in wonder. Until now, on his journey, Odysseus had only angered the gods: the warrior goddess, Athena, the sea god, Poseidon, and the wind god, Aeolus. Were the gods looking upon him with favor again? Odysseus looked down at the magic moly in his hand. He raised the flower to his lips and ate it. Then, with new strength and courage, he walked toward the gleaming walls of the witch's palace. Chapter 5. The Witch's Palace. Odysseus opened the gate that led to Circe's palace. Huge wolves and lions prowled the courtyard. Animals approached him eagerly, sniffing the air and making soft, friendly sounds. Odysseus stared at them with horror and pity. He knew that they were men, trapped in the bodies of wild creatures. Odysseus moved swiftly through the courtyard. At the door of the palace, he called out for Circe. Soon the enchantress appeared. Her long braids gleamed like gold. Her jeweled gown shimmered and sparkled. She spoke in a soft, warm voice. "Enter, please." she said to Odysseus, and she held open the door. Without a word, Odysseus stepped into the sunlit palace. Circe invited him to sit down and rest. Let us make a drink to refresh you after your long troubles. She left the room for a moment, then she came back with a cup, and she handed it to Odysseus. Here, she said, drink this. Odysseus put the cup to his lips. As he sipped the brew, the Circe tapped him with her wand. The foolish man, she said, off to the pigsty with the rest of them. Hermes' magic herb protected Odysseus from Circe's evil spell. He did not turn into a pig, as the witch had expected. Instead, he pulled out his bronze sword and held it to her throat. Circe shrieked in alarm. Why does my magic have no effect on you? She cried. Who are you? What is your name? My name is Odysseus, he told her. Odysseus? Hermes once told me that a great warrior named Odysseus would someday visit my palace. If you are indeed this man, put away your sword. We must trust one another and become friends. Odysseus glared at her. How can you speak of trust when your evil magic has transformed my men into beasts? You must swear on oath that you will do nothing to harm me. Circe bowed her head. In a whisper, she swore not to harm Odysseus. When Odysseus put his sword away, she called for her handmaidens. Lovely nymphs of the woods and river slipped out from the shadows of the palace. They made a great fire under the cauldron of water. Odysseus bathed in the soft healing water. Then he dressed in a flowing cloak. The nymphs led him to the great hall of the palace, where a feast had been prepared for him. Circe invited Odysseus to sit at her table. She filled the golden cups with wine, but Odysseus wouldn't eat or drink. He sat in silence, staring at Circe. Odysseus, why will you not eat my bread or drink my wine? You must not fear me now, for I have given my solemn oath that I will never harm you. Odysseus fixed his eyes upon her. What sort of captain could enjoy meat or wine when his men are not free? If you want me to be happy at your table, you must undo the spell you have cast over my men. Circe held his gaze for a long moment, then she took a deep breath and rose from the table. With her wand in her hand, she stepped out of the palace into the courtyard. Odysseus followed her and watched her open the gate to the pigsty. 22 fat pink hogs barreled forward, snorting and grunting. The enchantress rubbed the potion on the head of each animal, then touched them all with her wand. All at once the bristles fell off, and the pigs miraculously turned back into men. The men were younger, taller, and more handsome than ever before. They embraced Odysseus and wept with joy. They asked about their comrades. Even Circe was moved by the tears of her captives. Odysseus, go back to the rest of your crew. Bring them to my palace. I swear that I will treat them well too. Odysseus left the palace. He hurried through the green forest until he came to the men waiting for him on the shore. When they saw the leader alive, they shouted with great relief and threw their arms around him. With the help of Hermes, the spell of Circe, the enchantress, has been broken. Your comrades have all been turned back into men. Come with me now to the palace, and you shall be united with them. Some of the Greeks drew back in fear. I assure you, Odysseus told them gently, Circe has sworn to welcome you into her palace. All the men finally agreed to go with Odysseus. They pulled the ship onto the shore and hid all their belongings in a cave. Then they followed Odysseus back through the shadowy green forest until they came to Circe's glimmering palace. Circe welcomed the Greeks into her palace. She bid her handmaidens to draw baths for the men and anoint them with olive oil. The nymphs gave the tired Greeks woolen cloaks and tunics, then led them to a feast in the green hall. At the feast, Circe urged Odysseus to remain with her in her palace. You're not the same man you were when you left Ithaca long ago. Your battles and sorrows have left you weak and weary. Your own family will not know you. Odysseus did indeed feel a great weariness as he thought of the war with Troy and his nightmarish voyage toward home. The monsters and giants, the cruel death of his men. Stay with me until you have forgotten all your grief and sad memories. Said Circe, when you are strong in mind and body, I will help you find your way home. Feeling the burden of his losses, Odysseus surrendered to the wishes of the lovely witch. He promised Circe that he would stay with her until he and his men were strong again. The end.